So, welcome to our second episode here of the Accidental Big Band Behind the Scenes. Again, my name is John Gardner. I guess you could say I'm the person that kind of came up with some of the ideas behind this whole thing. But just wanted to give those of you who are new to this ensemble just a little background as to what we are. So, we're comprised of education-driven musicians from around the world. Our purpose is to entertain, enrich, and expand the international music community with video performances, educational interviews, while advocating member-supported charities and organizations. We are a strictly not-for-profit organization. So all that being said, we make music for fun, we talk to each other for fun, and we have a good time. Hopefully you're going to enjoy this tonight. I definitely enjoyed editing it. From the video aspect, and I know our audio engineer, Mr. Travis Hill, big shout out, had a hoot and or holler while doing this as well. So tonight we're premiering a brand new chart, Dinero de Sangre, which actually means blood money. And what's kind of cool about this is that I came up with the inspiration from this chart many years ago when my wife and I moved to the greater Philadelphia suburb area of Norristown. And we were looking for a place to eat, and we just so happened to drive past a brewery offshoot called Conshohocken Brewery Bridgeport at the time. Now it's called Puddlers. It's the same brand of great beer and great food and really, really nice venue. But it was one of my first brews that I had here since moving back into Pennsylvania. And I loved this beer so much, I was like, I need to write a chart off it. Well, like most musicians, we get so busy with everything else that we start to kind of forget to do stuff or maybe procrastinate. Not that any of those things ever have happened to me ever. But the chart ended up just kind of formulating throughout the years to the point where, sometime last year I was like, I need to sit down. I need to actually write it. And gosh, by golly, I finally sat down and wrote it. And that's what you got tonight. It is a Latin inspired tune. It's got a couple of different neat educational innuendos in there that we could talk about, but I don't think you guys are here to actually listen to me. I mean, I could talk and rant and rave all night, but I'm pretty sure I'm not that entertaining. Don't agree. I know it's true. So without further ado, let's go ahead and introduce our panel this evening. So tonight, all of these are members yet again from the ensemble. Tonight we have Miss Chelsea Meynig, our guest flautist and piccolo player. Chelsea is a native of the state of Virginia, and I've known her for, how long have I known you for? What, like 3, maybe 4 years?
I think it's like getting close to 5 at this point, but
Ooh.
Yeah, at least
right.
4.
Man, well, Chelsea and I, we work in this organization called, this organization called TuneUp Philly, and they're an offshoot branch of the Philadelphia Youth Orchestra. And we essentially work with these kids at the Salvation Army Kroc Center in Philadelphia and teach them how to play their instruments, play as an ensemble. And I've had the privilege and honor of writing a lot of the arrangements that they get to play. And she does a lot. I think I might just let her explain what she does. But to be honest with you, it's been a treat and delight for me to work with you all these years. So Chelsea, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself?
Well, I do. I work with John at this organization called TuneUp Philly. And I, when we had an orchestra there in person, I would conduct and I would teach the flute studio. I am a freelance musician, flute player around Philadelphia. I feel very much a fish out of water in this because I do that classical thing and you all don't, and you all don't do that thing really, really well.
Don't sell yourself short. You play a lot of like really cool stuff that's not necessarily, in the typical classical motif, if I'm not mistaken. Like last year, I remember this time last year, I think, yeah, I'm pretty sure it was this time last year, I came and saw you perform with your woodwind quintet +1, a really cool rendition of oh shoot, what was it called?
Peter and the Wolf with
that's it.
Drag Queen who narrated. We called it Peter and the Duck.
It was so awesome. Like the music, of course, was fantastic, but the pageantry that you guys added in with it and watching your interaction with the wolf, I mean, it just added so much more to the music. So don't sell yourself short that you're just like, oh, I'm a classical player.
Well,
No, you're
okay.
much more than that. You're much more than that.
Hold
You're a
on.
great all-around musician.
Thank you very much. I do lots of my work before COVID involved playing new music, and a lot of like out there new music. I play with a go check out Revolution Wins, which is what John was talking about. Check out Revolution Wins. And I play with another ensemble called the ENA Ensemble, ENA. You should check them out too. Which is like a chamber opera company, and we play lots of different composers' commissioned works, and that seems to be a large part of my life now, is just playing super out there, vaguely classical idiom music. It's a good time. Yeah.
Nice. That's great. That's great. And yeah, so without further ado, we'll go to the next person then. Mr. Aaron Stroup. Aaron Stroup, he is an educator, a saxophonist, and clinician. He is the music department chairperson for the Lower Moreland Township School District. He's also the director for the Wind Ensemble, Symphonic Band, Concert Band, Jazz Ensemble, Jazz Combo, Pep Band, and is a teacher of AP Music Theory. I mean, I can keep going on with his bio. Like this guy, he's got a lot. Now, I came across Aaron when Mr. Shawn Kennedy, our drummer, once upon a time asked me to do an arrangement of his called Boogaloo Sub. Hint, hint, you should go check out the Philly Croc Jazz Orchestra because it's kind of cool. And we did a really great arrangement of that. I wrote it. But I did a transcription of Aaron and Bob Mintzer having at it in like a solo do-off thing. Holy crap. I had to slow that down next to nothing and just really like hone in on that. Because when Shawn Kennedy came to me, he's like, you should do an arrangement of this. It'd be really hip, man. I was like, yeah, cool. This will be awesome. I'm trying to come up with like some really neat ideas to kind of capture what was going on within that tune. And then I hear that section. I'm like, oh, this is what I want. I need this. I need to do it. It took forever and a stinking day just to get it precisely right. And then do the magic that I did with that. Again, I'm not giving away any things. You should go check it out. But dude, Aaron, I mean, tell us a little bit about yourself, man. Like you're also a Cannonball saxophone artist and a Diodario Reed endorser too, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct. I'm a saxophonist first, originally from Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and proud millionaire. And then moved down here. Well, actually, I've been teaching at Lower Moreland for 24 years, but I've known Shawn longer than that. We met at Dorney Park. I auditioned up in New York to play live music at Dorney Park and was put into a rock and roll band, the Jukebox Rockers. And Shawn, it was the first day I can remember it, meeting he and Heather the very first day. And so I've known him since back then. And I got my master's degree at University of the Arts and studied there, and then went to Lower Moreland to take what was then a half-time job. And I've never been anywhere else. So besides teaching and being a very proud teacher of the jazz ensemble and the wind ensemble and the concert band for all the kids, Shawn and I play a lot together and just play a lot in the area.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of your guys' gigs and stuff over the years, and I've definitely seen some of the video spots that you guys have done on TV and such like that too. Oh, I mean, your playing's great. Let's just put it that way. Playing's great, and I've heard some of the ensembles that you've got at the high school there too. I think the last one I heard was I don't know if it was last year or the year before, but you were heading down to that jazz festival that you guys typically go to, and I remember talking to our trombonist in this ensemble, Glenn DeGeorge, about it, and he was telling me all about it. He's like, dude, you got to check it out. He's like, every festival that you can ever go to is always awesome. However, this one, he was like, it was just something a little bit more special about it. What festival was that? It wasn't the Mid-Atlantic, was it?
Yeah, well, there's Mid-Atlantic Jazz Festival, which we do every year, and we've been very successful there. But the big one that we've done before is the Swing Central Jazz Festival, which is in Savannah, Georgia. And so that's, I'm very proud of my students. And we have great kids. And I'm most proud because it's a very small high school compared to all the arts schools and the giant schools with giant music departments that we run into.
Yeah.
but to make it, it's blind audition, which is making it, I'm super proud. So you submit your recording, you have to do a recording that they arrange, and then you choose one other one, and you record it, you submit it, and then you wait, and they pick 12 bands from around the country. So we've been selected 4 times in the past 8 years, I believe. So I'm just so proud of them. They're great kids.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for sharing all that. We'll definitely
Sure.
talk a little bit more here soon. And last but certainly not least, Mr. Derek Dillman, our lead trumpeter in the ensemble. Now, Derek, I met him a couple of years ago. I was looking for a sub for one of the gigs I had going on, and we needed a lead trumpet sub, and one of our saxophonists in the ensemble, Chris Moore, recommended this guy Derek, and he couldn't stop talking about him. He's like, yeah, he's a hard worker, he's a good guy, he plays trumpet. And I said, wait a minute, he plays trumpet. Some of this, I don't know about this. What is this hard worker nonsense and trumpet stuff? He's like, no, trust me. He will get the job done. And if he has questions, he'll come at you and talk about it. Honestly, every time I work with Derek, it's a treat and a delight. And if I'm not mistaken, Derek, you also just graduated with your master's in conducting from University of Delaware right now. Just started your first teaching gig right out of school, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So why don't you tell us a little about what you do, and a little bit more on your background there.
Awesome. So yeah, I'm a first year teacher. Not technically, this is my first full-time teaching gig. I've done a lot of, I was the assistant band director at a local high school for 5 years, starting my sophomore year of college. And I'd done a lot of like master classing and teching and going and helping out. So I've had plenty of experience before that, but I went to University of Delaware for my undergrad and my master's, undergrad in MUEd, master's in conducting, which is my second love, right along with trumpet. And while I was at UD, I was a very active performer. I competed at the national trumpet competition where we got 4th place. And then I was a part of the winning trumpet ensemble that won 1st place at the International Women's Brass Conference in the ensemble division. And I just like to play trumpet. I play gigs around. I'm still kind of like, compared to everybody else, I'm among giants here. Everybody in this band is so awesome and has done so much, and I'm just kind of getting started. But I like to play musicals, and I play for some high schools. I've played in the Delaware, Maryland, New Jersey, Pennsylvania area. Now I'm the high school band director at Calvert High School in Prince Frederick, Maryland, and I teach the marching band, the jazz band, symphonic band, wind ensemble, guitar class, and studies in advanced placement for all those AP kids out there. And I've never met my kids face to face. I'm the new guy coming off of a very successful and beloved band director who has left big shoes to fill. But it's been interesting being the new kid on the block, not having actually really met my kids before and going into this virtual thing.
You're not the only one who has that going on. And I have to say, though, I need to back up. You sell yourself short. You're a great player. So, honestly, don't ever doubt that. I mean, I've played a couple of gigs with you, and you come in sounding exactly what we need, putting it right there. So again, spot on player. And I'm very excited to see what you do with the program that you've inherited now, or essentially inherited, like at a great top tier standing level, and taking it to the next level, So I'm excited for you. This is really cool. So let's just get into some of these questions here. What we're going to do is I'm going to ask a couple of questions to each of you. And my wife, Elena, at some point is going to, chime in here, like wave her hand, do the Vulcan thing and stuff like that. Something to catch my attention. And essentially say, hey, we have a question. If you have a question, please drop it in the chat for one of our members here. Just make sure you're very specific if it's for a certain person. If it's for Aaron, just say question for Aaron, write it out. If it's a question for me, I'm going to direct it to Elena and let her answer it. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, I ain't going to do that. But honestly,
I'm not qualified.
But please, I highly encourage it. This is a very, very fluid thing. We just want to make sure that we're all having a good time before the actual video drops. So Derek, I'm going to pick on you first because you kind of hit on the first thing that came to mind when I was talking with you before this all started. You're a brand new director. you're right out of, I mean, you're not necessarily fresh out of college, but you're out of college now, out of your master's degree, getting right into a brand new school. Like you said, never having met these students before and expecting to, like, almost do the impossible. What are you doing right now to kind of keep the kids engaged and, getting them to perform at a consistently high tier level there? I mean, that having taught general music, elementary, middle school myself last year during this thing, like it was difficult. So what are you doing with this? Like how are you doing this as a first year person in a brand new district?
That's a great question. And I'm doing it in practice, not exactly, but in theory and concept, no different than what I would do if I were right in front of their faces. And the thing that I let them know from day one is that I may have never met them, but they have my undying trust. And I thought it was important for them to know how much I trusted them. I mean, they last year they were national champions in U.S. bands. They've got a very successful jazz program. They've got incredibly talented kids that work very hard and have a passion for music. And that was, people talk my ear off about that. And I was like, I can work with that. So knowing that I've got such hard workers on the other side of that screen, the first couple of weeks of school was just about proving that I had that trust in them and giving them a chance to trust me. So doing some informal music making, talking about music, what makes it so great. The hard thing about this whole COVID world is, kids are limited in what they can do right now. And that's not always a bad thing, but it's something that we need to be aware of.
Yeah.
And that I like to think at this point, they've established some trust in me. And I'm continuing to push them. We play every single day. In jazz band, I've structured it as a survey through the history of jazz. So we spend a couple weeks in a time period. We learn about the big points. We play in that style. We pick some charts. I've got PDFs of the real book that we play out of. We've talked a lot about improvising. We've done transcription activities where I'll go and transcribe a solo for them and they'll play the first 16 bars, and they've been digging the crap out of it.
That's awesome. That's great, man.
My wind ensemble kids, same thing. They're like, Mr. Dillman, we just want to play our instruments, because that's what they signed up for band for, was to do that. So we play every day. I push them with the repertoire that I pick within reason. One of my colleagues is actually here right now, and she'll tell you I'm a big repertoire snob, and maybe that's what a master's degree does to me. It makes me a snob. But and I just had one of them actually email me the other day telling me, that they've never been so challenged before, but they're having such a fun time, which was really rewarding to hear. And it's not, I mean, I tell them all the time, their best is going to look different all the time. We're not going to go play at the Midwest Convention tomorrow, but the fact that these kids are able to make music and feel like they're improving in a time where they've felt incredibly stagnant, especially those first weeks of school, playing warm-ups, they're like, I haven't touched my instrument since the day we left in March. I'm like, I know, but you're still going to do it, even if I got to drag you through the mud. And they got with it. And I'm just so incredibly proud of them. So the focus has been just on music making. For 75 minutes a day, they get to forget the world outside and just come and do what they like to do, even
Man,
if it's
that's
not in the
awesome.
way they like to.
Oh my gosh, that's awesome. Hearing that really does, as an educator and a player, like that kind of information really does warm my heart. That's great. So before we go on to our next person, I do have one question for you. When you're doing your transcription stuff, what are you doing with that, out of curiosity? What kind of transcription are you doing? Are you like, hey, let's go listen to Miles and just go "Doodle-doo-doo-doo," and then be like, how does this go? "Doodle-doo-doo." What is your technique with that? Like, especially in this virtual area. Like, I know what I do in person, but I'm curious as to what you do from a virtual standpoint.
Yeah. The internet is a great thing for us right now. And there's so many people that have gone and done these transcriptions and put it over the recording. So we talk in class about, I talk style all the time. They're probably sick of it, but the goal of the transcription exercise and what's on their rubric is to do whatever they can to sound like the person that they're playing. And they were like, wait, Mr. Dillman, like, what do you mean? And they've never done anything like this before. I'm like, just trust me. Go look at the sheet music, listen to them. And then of course they come in and they're like, but Mr. Dillman, like he holds this out for 8 beats and it's only written for like 4. I'm like, that's the point. That's what jazz is all about. We're going to play plenty of things in class that it's black and white, but I don't show up to teach you how to play black and white. And the people that show up to listen to us aren't coming to listen to robots who can read a piece of paper. And so the point of the transcription exercises is to really start engaging their ear, because they've never really done that in this way before, from what I understand. So, and the best way, as all of us know, to learn how to do jazz right is to listen to the people that do it best.
Yeah,
so it's
right.
multifaceted. It's to get them listening to people that know how to speak the language, and it's to get them copying people that know how to do it, because that's how they're going to get the knowledge to start thinking for themselves.
Yeah, that's great. That's some great information there. I know for my kids, at least my one high schooler, what we're doing right now, transcription, is we're listening to speeches, or I guess rap is what he likes to listen to.
Mm-hmm.
We listen to that and we look at the rhythm. And then with speeches, we look at the different small little inflections. I decided to do that based upon a recording that came out, I think last year, maybe the year before, the Presidential Suite by Ted Nash and Ted Nash Jazz Orchestra. Holy Hannah Montana. Good grief. Like you got to go check that out. That's a super cool thing where he took speeches, he wrote out a chart with that. And then before the chart actually played, he had an actor or an actress, depending upon who the speech was, give the speech. Then they play it. I mean, it's super awesome. But Derek, that's some great information there. That's great. Thanks for sharing. I appreciate that.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you.
Yeah. So let's move on to Aaron Stroup next. So Aaron, you're teaching right now. You've been teaching for quite some time here with your school. What are you doing right now that's a bit different, or perhaps are you continuing with the same kind of a process that you've done before, or are you trying to, I guess, tread different waters to help emphasize something different amongst your students?
Well, at first, being in the hybrid situation and then waiting for PPE to come in and everything just to be able to play, it actually was kind of an interesting time where we could focus on music literacy more than maybe we would in a situation where you're just worried about a concert or your next performance. So we kind of took a step back. And so, and really worked and now all the kids they know their circle of fifths and they know their major scales, and we could step back and do things like that. Our jazz ensemble meets in the evenings, so we keep that going. And now that we're back in virtual, we were back for a week in hybrid. Now we're back in virtual again. One of the things we do a lot is we have guests that come in every year for the spring concert. We have guest composers and we play their music and they conduct at our concerts, and also jazz people. So even last week we had jazz virtually on Thursday night, and Jeff Coffin from Dave Matthews Band, a saxophonist, came, just surprised him and popped in.
Good guy.
And he just came in. I just asked, because he's come to our school several times, and I said, look, and everyone's bored. Everyone has something to do. So he came on and just answered questions of, about the power of music to get these students through this. And Richie Kanata came, Billy Joel's sax player for a number of years. And he talked about the power of music, and that no matter what happens and you're stuck in your house or your power goes out, you have your instrument and you can express yourself in ways that a lot of people can't. And you should be really proud of that and use that. So we've done a lot of that, and I'm trying to do a lot of group projects so that they can still collaborate with each other, whether that's through, putting them into breakout rooms and they have to record through using Soundtrap, not to get too nerdy, but they can collaborate, and they have 2 weeks, and then we put it all together in a big 130 person project, but they're responsible for their little section. So it's we're all learning through this to find what they like. But again, it's the same thing. Keep them playing. They want to play. Keep them playing.
Yeah.
especially if they're in the room. If it is a hybrid situation, whatever in a room, they have to. It's the challenge of with say 8 people in the room and 20 on the screen. I'll have them tune with each other, unmute and tune and that kind of stuff. But now you're muted and we're playing through things, listening into the room. So those are some of the challenges that we've had.
Yeah, you just mentioned something. So this is what this is all about, like talking about different ideas and what everyone's doing. You mentioned sound trap. I'm not familiar with that one. I'm familiar with, I think it's Jam Kazam or something along those effects. But what is sound trap?
Well, it's a pretty cool. It's a web-based recording software where they can actually collaborate. So I can invite you and Chelsea and Derek and Travis into a project, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to record mine, and then mine goes into looks like a garage band scenario, and then Chelsea's pops in, and then we can actually chat live. Like, okay, try that again.
Cool.
But it's a little off here. So I even have students who volunteer to make. I'll make the click track, and so I have students that'll make the click track and count the measures and talk them through it. So they all have their headphones on with the click track, and then they're putting it together, and then they're learning how to mix it and make it sound different. But it's in real time. You can even video chat with each other within the recording software. It's super cool, and they're really having a good time. So we're trying to put together a couple, virtual pieces, if you will.
Sold. I wrote it down. I'm gonna look it up.
They're doing all the work, which is great.
I'm gonna look that up. Sold, man. That's great. That sounds awesome. Maybe we'll use it on the next one. Hint, hint.
Yeah.
Wink, wink.
Yeah,
That's
sure.
super awesome. That's really cool, because I could see that being a really neat thing where you're working in a section like with us, like myself being the lead player and Derek a lead. He and I, when we're recording our things, can go back and forth being like, John, how much of a staccato do you think we should have on this? Or
Yep.
need to scoop just a little bit more. How much more of a volume increase do we actually need there? That is really cool. Soundtrack.
So I put them into Google Meet into their own breakout room, and then they all have Soundtrap up. So they kind of all turn their screens off and go record something, and then they talk, but it's also in the Soundtrap, real time. So it's a pretty cool thing.
And that's during your class period. Like, they don't have to do it outside of it.
Correct. I try to keep everything during the class period. These kids are staring at screens so much. I'm trying to get them onto paper, and just playing music as much as possible. So, my wind ensemble students and jazz ensemble students are obviously doing things further off the school day, but to have them collaborate. So the groups, because of the way my schedule is just split up, they're kind of, you're confined to the instrumentation in that room, and you try to put them together the best you can. So you get some really fun sounds.
That's really cool, man. That is so awesome. Man, when we get out of this pandemic, I gotta come up and check out all this stuff out. Like, that is super hip. I'm very inspired by that Soundtrap. Cool. Very cool. Thanks for sharing, man. I appreciate that. Cool. So of course, let's go on to our last but not least person, Miss Chelsea Meynig. So Chelsea, you had hit upon something really neat in the beginning. You're not a jazzer, but you like to play a lot of like new music. Can you talk to us as somebody, first off, as a professional musician such as yourself, like how do you juggle those different idea and idioms, and like how do you convey that to somebody that's learning something? Like for myself, I have to admit, I'm not the most strongest flute player in the world. I can double, I can teach it. I definitely don't want to go play a pit or an orchestra gig because I don't feel like getting laughed off the stage. I'm not that great. I'm good enough that it gets me by and we get the job done. We have a good time doing it. But what do you do? Like, how do you approach these things? Like, how did you even approach this? I know you were like, oh, John, I don't know. But again, you did fantastic. How did you approach this kind of a thing?
So, I have a very, very basic approach to all sorts of music, is that there is an emotional content that needs to break through. Like, that's the point. That's why we're here. This is the language. That's, why say something if you don't actually have a point or something to say? So, I try to do my best to take the I've been educated through the classical system, and I take my classical music grammar and I apply that to my emotional content and see what comes out. So like this, it was a bop. I was actually right before it. I had decided to take on a virtual piccolo audition, and normally I try to avoid piccolo like the plague. John went, "Hey, there's a flute piccolo part," and I went, "Okay, cool." So I guess,
to be fair, I did ask. I said, "Do you think you could do this?" And you're like, "Oh, but of course, this will be great." And I was like, "Okay, cool." And it sounded great. It added exactly that flavor that we needed.
which I'm really happy about, and that's my last like criteria for taking jobs is within reason. You know, just say yes. If a composer goes like, "Can you make this sound?" Sure. Like, what, use some adjectives to describe what kind of sound you want, and I can use my training to create that emotional content. And it has not failed me yet, and I've been thrown some doozies. So I hope that answers that question.
No, yeah, that definitely answers that question. Because I mean, I know for myself, like I've been handed a couple of different things throughout my years of playing as a, a jazz player. I I've played it all. I've played like wedding gigs, pop gigs. I've played. I've even played a country gig. That was actually kind of cool. I have to admit, that was actually really cool. That was really neat. I've played a couple of ones where it's like a ska band, and I've played, a couple of different combo gigs, but also in the classical realm, I've played wind ensemble stuff, some chamber sax ensemble things, and then a couple of unique ones. Like at one point, a friend of mine, actually, he's the bassist here, Isaac Strader, he and I were trying to get something together where it was bass, or I'm sorry, cello, mallet percussion, which he was going to play marimba and a couple of different other things. And I would just play a various range of saxophones. And he and I were both writing arrangements for it. And to be honest with you, for me, it was always difficult when we would play a more straight ahead piece, or I guess straight piece, where I had to really focus and center my sound as opposed to, being a little bit more free and open with it. And for me, I always had to get in that right mindset and use a lot of specific notations and notes. So I guess my next question to you is, and this could be open to anybody, I guess, but mainly for you, as someone who is classically trained and then coming into a scenario where it's all about feel and what we do together, did you have to like write any specific notes for yourself? Like how much did you mark up your music, or how much do you typically mark up your music when doing any type of a gig? Like, is it usually just like, oh, here's a little notation, this is exactly what I need, feel and touch wise?
It really depends on the gig.
Mm.
So like if, we've all, I'm sure, done the weddings, you park it and you play. I'm not marking that stuff. Usually those are sight reading actually anyway, but I didn't say that. Please hire me for weddings.
I'll edit that out.
We've all done it. It really depends. For this particular one, I don't, from playing with big bands, this one in particular, in person or not, I really become aware of these overarching things that I see totally differently. We do not see eighth notes the same, and it's just mind blowing. It really, it made me think. The first time I ever sat with like a real big band, I did some like jazz things before I met John, but he kind of asked me to play one thing. I sat down and I, felt like a fish out of water, and I had this recall of arguably my most, famous teacher, who's a British guy, my undergrad degree. I saw him play with a jazz group, and I've never been more embarrassed for such a great musician ever. And this fellow was utterly brilliant and can make people cry with his flute or feel a myriad of things, and just looked lost. And I remember sitting down and the first time going, I will not do that. I won't. So the next rehearsal went better. But so to get back to the question, I would mark overarching things. I need to sit on the back of the beat. That is not a classical orchestra thing to do.
No, for sure. That's definitely for sure.
So I would write that on every page, or like, when I needed it. But you know, uh,
So what you're saying is, yes, mark it up. When in doubt,
yeah,
mark it up.
when in doubt, mark it up. People, my students even too, they have this stigma with writing on your page. No one sees it but you. They hear
Yeah,
what you do, so do what you need to do.
yeah, you're right. Because I mean, because that brings me to my next point. So like, I know you teach a lot of private students. In fact, I know a couple of yours, and you in turn know a couple of mine. Of course, that's how the circles work. But how are you like helping a lot of your students now as a private teacher and instructor, like understand that it's still important to do these types of a concepts, like what you need to do writing wise and on your music, and then what you need to do practice wise? Because I know for myself as a private teacher, I mean, I was seeing a lot of my students one-on-one for a hot minute, and then as of Monday we're going strictly virtual until after the new year, or yeah, after the new year essentially, just out of an overabundance of caution. But the one thing I was trying to instill upon them is that when you're in doubt, definitely write it down. When you don't know the answer, ask the question. When you need to actually go reference something, oh gee, I don't know, go to the YouTube and reference the recording, or Spotify or iTunes or any of these things, because we all know that you don't necessarily have to play video games on screens all the time. And I think that's something we're all learning together. But anyway, back to the actual question at hand. What do you do, since you teach a lot of your students virtually? Like, how do you keep this all consistent for them?
So I have to say this was a bit of a learning curve for me, but it it really comes down to like extending what I previously thought was a kind of higher education concept to all of my students now, which is like what we do when we practice is to figure out what is actually happening, like what reality says versus what we hear. You know, in flute, the slots of the sound happens about 6 inches from your ear, and it's really different from what is actually happening. And recording will, like, as we all know, will shine a very bright light on that. So it's all about trying to shift in, not necessarily, I mean, depending on the level of student and what they're learning and everything else, but to go judgment free, what is actually happening. This is not good, this is not bad, tell me what reality is reflecting back to me. And taking the judgment out has been like the thing, because depending on the student, of course, they will like beat up on themselves or just ignore it. And when we incorporate recording, it's hard to ignore. The beating up gets worse. So it's been really a kind of it feels more like psychotherapy sometimes than it feels like flute.
Well, I mean,
But
like that's a lot of what the private teacher does sometimes. Like I mean, no offense to any of my educators that teach primarily ensembles, but I feel like a lot of the times as an educate like a private teacher, that we need to have that kind of a therapy session to kind of talk yourself down. Because I know for myself in the practice room, I mean, Alana could test this. I say all of God's favorite words and then some, and then make up some new ones. That's for sure. I mean, I could write an entire dictionary if I wanted to, and I'm sure some of you could relate to that. Even some of you who have tuned in, you could relate to that too. But I think that's kind of important as well, because you said this early on, that the music is all about the feel and the emotion that you can bring into it and bring out of it. If you're not talking about that thing with somebody, like what you're actually feeling, I mean, this
what are
is
we doing here? Exactly.
exactly. That's exactly it. You know what? Let me ask this, Aaron or Derek. I mean, what do you guys think to that kind of a thing? I mean, you know, a lot of the time as teachers in the classroom, we don't get a chance to really do that one-on-one connection, like super focused all the time. Sure, you got your little offshoots here and there, but I mean, what do you guys think of this?
Oh, thanks, Aaron. I make those opportunities. I think it's incredibly important that even in an ensemble setting that we have them. And I just last week, as a matter of fact, my wind ensemble were complete zombies. They were not themselves. They were not responding in the chat. Granted, none of them ever turn their cameras on anyway, but normally they're very active in the chat. And they
You did send them Dunkin' Donuts, right, with coffee?
Yeah. It was like my mic wasn't on. So I completely derailed class, and I just asked them a simple question. Tell me about some of your favorite memories in band. We talked for the rest of I guess it was an hour at that point, about that. But they came back this week crazy different. And it's so important that we reconnect, like Chelsea said, about why we even do this thing in the first place. And it's such a fundamental part of my teaching. I don't outright tell them that, because at this point in their musical journey in high school, they've probably heard it a million times, like, play with emotion. It's about the space between the notes, not, and like, they're sick and tired of hearing it like that. So I engage them in discussions and topics that make them think more about themselves than just sitting down and trying to play from top to bottom like it's a math test and they're trying to get the answers right. We have conversations about performance anxiety. We do introspective conversations. We have a diverse composers project happening right now where I'm getting them to not only think about the music that they hear in the larger world around them, but trying to identify the sounds that happen from music instead of just like, so it was like
essentially paint a picture, right?
Exactly. Trying to get them to think about those larger concepts without having somebody, take the big pill and shove it down their throat, because they don't want it that way.
Right. Cool. What about you, Aaron?
Well, first, to Chelsea's point, one of the hardest things is that, in a group of 130 symphonic band, you have grades 9 through 12 in one ensemble, students who, quite frankly, in middle school hid and wiggled their fingers, and now they're combined with wind ensemble kids who are ready to go to school for music in one ensemble. And what they're finding out very quickly through recording themselves is the metronome does not lie to you, and the recording does not lie to you. So as soon as they hear it back, that's not what I sound like. So that's really tough. And keeping them positive through all that. And you're getting better. This is about improving, because when we come out the other side and we get to play together again, that first note is going to be magical. That first time. And who knows when we're going to get to conduct a 130 person band again. That's a scary thing. Like, who knows when that's going to happen again. And the intangible thing that is lost in all this, and what is for me the saddest, is where do these kids always hang out every free second they have? They're in your rooms. They're in the band room. I was in the band room even when I wasn't supposed to be in the band room. And our students do that. It's just where they go. It's their room. We have jazz band at 5:30. They don't go home. They just hang. They go to Wawa. They eat their dinner. They play music. It's just, losing that is really, really tough. So to Derek's point, it's very important that we keep that camaraderie and those relationships going, because it's about the music, but it's about kids, and it's about building relationships too through this, which is super important.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, because I remember as a kid, like, I used to do the same thing. Like, we would have our after school rehearsal twice a week for jazz, 3 times a week for marching band. And then when marching band season ended, it ended up being 3, maybe sometimes 4 times a week for jazz, depending upon what we had coming up. I mean, we weren't really competitive, but we traveled a lot. We played a lot. I have done a lot of different great things as a musician and as a player, especially when I was in school, in high school and stuff like that. But then throughout the course of my career here, I've done quite a bit too. But you're right. I mean, it's essentially your area, your place. And that's great to hear that you both do that. Like, you have that one-on-one connection. You make the time to actually do that and engage in that kind of a thing. That right there, I mean, that right there just kind of hits the nail on the head. Without actually having, those things there. I mean, what are we going to do? Oh, I see Mr. DeGeorge is saying he's going to buy Wawa for the band. Great. Thanks, Len. Appreciate it. So Mrs. Gardner is currently telling me that we've got a couple of minutes left here, that I want to make sure we highlight these charities. But Aaron, since you were the last person I just talked to, let's go ahead and talk to you first. You want to give us a quick 2, maybe 3 minute segment on what charity you're highlighting. And again, my friends that are tuned in right now, I highly encourage you to support all the charities that we post and talk about. These are all very good and important causes. And it's just great. Go ahead, Aaron.
So going back to my first answer tonight, the charity I have selected is Jazz Lives Philadelphia. And it was started by a former student of mine and of ours, our program. I believe she graduated in maybe 2013. And she ended up being lead alto player. And she was not a tremendous player, but what a great kid and a great leader, and just made everyone better, you know? And she really, I call her the long tone queen. And she got really into jazz her senior year. And we do this senior project where you go out into the community, and she actually did hers with the Essentially Ellington program. So she took the train and went to New York and worked there, and then ended up doing that in college. So then, as I said, we're very, very fortunate that we've had the experience to have all these jazz musicians, from Bob Mintzer to Jeff Coffin to Fed Chock, to, you know, every year she's had these opportunities. So she started this group with some friends from Temple, Jazz Lives Philadelphia, and their whole mission is to bring jazz education to the community, and also to schools that don't have those opportunities, and to bring really great Philadelphia musicians into your school for you, and to teach students about jazz, and to keep jazz moving forward, and to bridge, you know, the schools and the community together. So it's a really great organization, and I'm super proud of her. So that's why I chose it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Before we go to the next person, real quick, who was the person that started that, out of curiosity?
Her name is Sarah Leonard.
Sarah Leonard.
Mm-hmm.
Why do I know that name? Saxophone player?
Mm-hmm.
You said? Okay. I'll have to think about that. I know her from somewhere. I know that name from somewhere. So I got to look on that. But thank you for, supporting that charity and bringing it to everyone's attention here. Let's go to Chelsea. Chelsea, who are you supporting tonight?
I am supporting the Local 77 Musicians Union Relief Fund. I know that a lot of us sort of educators and freelancer and musicians who play in the world are, what is okay anymore, but are okay. We can teach, and we can, figure our way through that. But I know a lot of really wonderful and talented musicians don't have as much of a root in teaching, and we're really, really thrown a curve by this. Lots of friends and mentors specifically. So that's a great one. I also would like to mention TuneUp Philly, which I heard today in a meeting. They have a donation acceptance directly to the program now through the PYO Philadelphia Youth Orchestra website. Nice. You can click on TuneUp Philly, and we have a donation button now, which is awesome. We teach kids from all around Philadelphia. We get them instruments. We now, with COVID, they get sort of more private instruction as well as in a group. Both, every little bit counts and makes the world better. I hope that covers it.
Yeah, no, that definitely covers it. No, that's great. Yeah, having worked with TuneUp, I mean, through the Kroc Center itself, it's definitely a really good organization to get involved with. It's definitely been, Atlanta can attest to this. Every Monday night and Wednesday night when I would come home after rehearsal and stuff, she would always say, "You're beaming. Were the kids great?" I was like, "No, they were better than great. They're always a treat. I always get an interesting story, that's for sure." And it's always a good laugh on the way home, because it's just awesome. Yeah. Cool. Well, thanks for sharing that. And last, of course, and certainly not least, Mr. Derek Dillman. So, Derek, who are you bringing to our attention tonight?
So as a conductor at heart, and wind band is where my love of music grew, and it's just where my entire heart is. I also, like Chelsea, have a very deep love and appreciation for new music, and I also have a deep love, appreciation, and passion for diverse and underrepresented composers and making sure that their voice is heard. So the charity that I'm bringing to the table tonight is called And We Were Heard, which is a nonprofit which was started by Dr. Caitlin Bove at Pierce College in Washington. And their whole mission is to bring into the mainstream the recordings of music written by people who are underrepresented that otherwise don't really get to get their music heard. It started out primarily as female identifying composers, but it has grown very much since its inception to now, you know, various genders, various ethnicities and races and identifiers. And they now not just do wind band, but orchestra as well. And what's awesome about And We Were Heard is that any composer can apply to be a part of the program, and any band can apply to be a part of the program. And what they do is they pair based on the materials you send and the level of your band. They pair you with a composer. So you can be as young as a grade 1 or 2 up to the grade 6s and 5s and anywhere in between. And they will pair you together, and you will become the reference recording. They will send audio equipment out to you because not every school is in a place where they have that recording quality equipment. And the donations that And We Were Heard take help offset those costs of making sure that they have enough recording equipment to send out to these schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges, making sure they have the resources they need to bring in more composers. And it grows every single day. It's such an awesome organization, and one that is very close to my heart, that I highly recommend not only donating to, but going and checking out their website, andwewereheard.org, and listening to that music and seeing just how many voices are out there that are right in front of our face that we don't sometimes even notice.
That's really cool. I had never heard of that organization before. I'm gonna have to check that out too. That's really, really hip. And We Were Heard. Yeah. Thanks for sharing that, man. That's great. I wonder if they take jingles. I've got a couple of really good ones. No, I'm just kidding.
It always
yeah, right. Cool. Well, I mean, tonight for myself, I'm bringing to light the organization called the Education Trust. The Education Trust. This is the achievement gap in America is greatly influenced by race, class, and background. All factors that can be hard to address. Still, the Education Trust, from what I understand, is on a mission to tackle these challenges. In its fight for equality, the Education Trust definitely, again, from all of my readings and research on this, gives a voice to the underfunded schools, the LGBTQ community students of color and low-income students, all of these things. I think it's very important to obviously endorse education, but I think it's even more important to endorse education to the places that need these resources. I mean, I am of the belief that you shouldn't have to pay your way to get a good education. Education should be something that everybody has access to. I mean, let's think about it. I mean, if I had to pay like $20 to learn 2 + 2 = 4, I'm telling you right now, I would still think 2 + 2 = 5, and the next chart we play would be 5, 4, and it'd be like, no, it's 1, 2, 3, 4. What are you talking about? Anyway, the point being is that this fund, this trust, they offer a number of free resources and tools for educators and administrators. And it's essential that we continue to fund these types of things. And that's why I'm supporting the Education Trust tonight. So, before we call it, because I'm getting that signal from Mrs. Gardner, because we got about 4 minutes left before the live premiere here. I want to open it up again to anybody that has any questions. I strongly encourage you to drop it in the chat or raise your hand, I guess. I don't really know if that's still the thing on Zoom.
You can raise your hand in Zoom in case anyone didn't know that.
Oh, you still can? Oh, okay.
You can
Most of the time my students just yell and be like, hey, Mr. Gardner, yo. So, I mean, if there aren't any, we can continue to talk shop, or perhaps some of the band members that are with us. Or what do you got, Mrs. Gardner?
Yeah, I was gonna say. So anyone who somehow found us without following us on our social media, I would ask that you follow us and share. This band is fully reliant on social media for our kind of word of mouth, as we are a national organization, and international actually organization. I apologize. So we definitely want to make sure that it gets out there. We're really hoping, we had a fantastic turnout last month for our video, and we're really hoping to do even better with this one. And it's all thanks to the band and everyone who has supported the band, everyone who has liked us and has shared us, and we appreciate it so much. And I just wanted everyone on here to know that. So thank you so much for joining us tonight. I did drop, we have 3 minutes until the YouTube launch, so we can chat, but I did drop the YouTube link in the chat box for anyone who may not have had it.
Yeah, thanks again, Mrs. Gardner. Always appreciative. A big shout out to the entire band again. This was great. You guys did a fantastic job with this. I'm very excited for everyone to hear this brand new chart, Dinero de Sangre, also known as Blood Money. Big shout out to Travis Hill for all the audio work that he put in with this. I know it was not easy, but good things don't come from just doing easy stuff. It always comes from hard work. And tonight's going to be a true testament to that. Again, like Mrs. Gardner said, share it around. This is how these things get spread out and talked about, especially with these charities. So again, thank you very, very much.
Yes, Chelsea.
While I found the raise hand button, I just want to thank John and Elena for putting this together. Really, like, it is a cool thing to have to do any music with people in any capacity right now. And while I am the most fish out of water here, it's been really cool, and I really appreciate it.
Checks in the mail. No, but it really has been great. This is a lot of fun. I said to Elena the other day that this was something that, yeah, it's a lot of work, but to be honest with you, I really do enjoy this. Like, I texted her in the middle of our session here that your question helped propel a whole other series of commentary questions. Like, this is the kind of a thing that I was hoping for. And thus far, within the first 2 episodes here, nobody has, defeated my expectations. You've all surpassed it. So please continue to do so. We've got about 1 minute before the video actually premieres on YouTube. The link is dropped in there. I invite you to go ahead and tune in for the live premiere. We're going to be talking about some stuff. If you have any questions on the live feed there, just put it in the chat. And I invite you to come back and, discuss a little bit afterwards what you thought about, and maybe give me some feedback as to how we can make things better for the next time I write something. Maybe I'll put the, Jeopardy theme in there next time. Who knows? Anyway, thank you again. Let's go to YouTube.